go ahead and kick off, especially since we've got folks where they can't keep you up until 3:30 in the morning. So I appreciate everybody joining us, and I'm excited today because we have such an amazing group here with a mix of speakers. Typically, what we do in these rooms is we spend in the first portion of it asking just a couple of general questions, getting to know, having everybody kind of chime in on some of the key themes and questions. And then about 45 minutes in, or depending if the room ends up small, it can open up earlier. Then folks are invited up onto the stage, of course, to ask any questions, probe further, and also if there's something you want to share, add to the conversation, or a project you're working on, we're very open to that too. We have a very open stage. If for any reason, I don't know that things will get too wild tonight talking about the future of P2E Gaming, but it's happened before. And we just mute and then, cool down, and then you can come back up in case that happens. But I don't think it's going to tonight. So I'd love to do a kickoff. I'd love to get kind of an intro from each of you, and then I'll share a little bit about ISA since there was a specific request. Marketing will be very happy with me. But you want to go ahead and kick us off? Maybe, Thomas, you can go ahead and start.
Sure, absolutely.
I just saw you first on my screen.
Absolutely. Yeah, here at 2:10 a.m. my time zone. Thank you very much for the invite. Regardless, you said it in the intro. That's what happens when you're working with multiple time zones. At Pixie, we're no strangers to that. We're 20-some people now. We're working completely remote, covering, last I checked, I think 8 or 9 different time zones between those 20-some people, just about 12 or 13 countries. So we're pretty well represented globally. We are, well, these days it's different. We started as an independent game development company back in October of last year, and our primary goal was fixing what we thought was broken in the play-to-earn industry, and what we still think is wrong in it currently. But we're not the only ones working to fix it these days, though we think we're part of the pack. And our philosophy is taking play-to-earn gaming back to the original game design philosophies and original game design theory that underpinned the mainstream gaming market and made that such an absolute Goliath, despite people not making any money when wasting their time away playing those games. So if it's possible to do with no revenue incentive, then we think it's possible to do even if players are a little bit incentivized by making some money. So that's how our trajectory began, and these days we're looking at some slightly bigger questions in the industry. We're looking at modular plug-and-play software. So we're saying, well, we have a bunch of developers moving into this space. What if we, clear a little bit of the roadblocks for them ahead of time, and then they save having to reinvent the wheel for the 100 next companies coming into Web3. So now we're trying to use a lot of the stuff we're making for our games to sort of expand Web3 as a whole and hopefully help onboard that next billion users. But that's us in a nutshell, I suppose. Me, myself, short story, I'm the CEO, co-founder. Mostly I'm just a glorified marketing guy. Our CTO, Wesley, is the guy who's technically smart. I know the consumers, I know video games, and then I try to make myself applicable somewhere in between.
Yeah, I love that. I think that in this space, more than ever, having like subject matter expertise with technologists, right, is what's probably going to get us there to the next level. It sounded like you were talking about some type of like protocol or onboarding, and I also noticed that you all have very clever Twitter bios, and you made me laugh. So thank you. Gary, let's hear about you, Mr. Just Won Something Impressive.
Hey guys, I'm Gary. I'm a new project manager at ISA and a SME consultant for the Web3 team. I have a background in community management, and I'm an absolute nerd when it comes to gaming. I've played every single game you can think of on any single platform, retro or new. And I was a competitive gamer and a Twitch streamer for about a year and a half after graduating college, mainly because finding a job was hard. But the other side was I really, really just love gaming and love the communities. And I'm really excited to hear about what everyone has to bring to the table tonight.
Yeah, we'll be excited to hear from you, Gary, like your perspective, like, what are your expectations? What are the things that you're weary of or that you're seeing, especially with some of the resistance and adoption? So that'll be real fun. And now let's hear a little bit. I'm like dying to know more about Northern Guild. Um, I'm excited to hear more about Katian Gaming. Am I saying it correctly? I know that there's been multiple title releases, so I'm really excited to hear how your studio works and operates. Would you like to introduce?
Yeah, hi. Hi. First of all, hi, I'm Mel. I'm a global business developer builder. Sorry, global business development builder for Kathian Gaming. At the same time, I'm one of the two leads for Kathian Gaming Philippines, where I'm focused on growth and strategy. Now, I've been an observer of crypto, especially or specifically Bitcoin since 2016. Been an investor since 2018. I'd been part of a few global DeFi startups since 2021. Now, I also been a gamer of since the Dota 1 days. So that's about a decade ago, back when I was in college in the University of the Philippines. Outside of crypto or Web3 space, I've got my own business and I've been with top e-commerce companies in the Philippines with also together with Comcast and with HSBC. So I'm more of a generalist. So I've been across several industries and several roles throughout my lifetime, and it would probably keep going. Now, yeah, with Cathian Gaming, it is a global gaming and entertainment company. We bring technical gaming and marketing expertise together with deep roots in the blockchain industry. We work pretty remote also, and we got members across dozens of countries, summing up to more than 200 members in the entire Cathian organization. We got um, we announced seven games right now on our website, but we also have around 20 games in the pipeline right now.
Definitely want to hear more about that, and specifically, how the technology, blockchain technology, is like elevating that experience, right, and making those connections. I'd love to hear, I guess, from the group, and feel free to just kind of jump in. Um, we've got a good mix of people here from different sides, but as we talk about the, Web3 in general, blockchain technology, like how so far do you think it's impacted the gaming industry, and how so far? And more importantly, what do you think, is going to be one of those biggest impacts that we see on the space? As I'm talking to clients and in different categories, right? It seems like everyone has sort of there are either concerns or excitement, right, about what those various opportunities are. So I'd love to hear from you all what you think impact is going to look like, and then I get to just listen.
I'll jump in and go first.
Do
Um,
it.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think a lot of people could probably bounce off of this, but what we're finding right now is that a lot of the bigger games and, excuse me, a lot of the gamers in, like, on the gaming side of it, is definitely there's a little bit of weariness, but then at the same time, the people that are like really aware of what's going on like in a bigger scale, obviously there's a lot of innovation and excitement as well. um, I think that in general you see that like these bigger brands are like saying like, oh, we're gonna ever do, PDE, like, we're purists, things like that. But at the same time, I think that that's just because it's like we've had examples of these first few blockchain games that haven't really prioritized fun or like a really cool gaming experience. It's really just been like, click these buttons, stake your NFTs, or it's just a gamified version of like crypto. it's not actually like real true blue gaming. And so I think as these new developers are coming in, and like developers like us that are coming in and saying, hey, like we want to make a blockchain game that is so fun and we're creating an MMORPG, people are going to have that same MMORPG experience. It just so happens that there's going to be you know, some play to earn mechanics within the game. So that's kind of in general what I'm finding.
Yeah, I was reading an article today that was like almost mirroring your sentiment exactly, right? And it's like that challenge of there's some, just like strong heels dug in resistance, especially depending on like the type of gaming, right, that we're talking about. And at the same time,
Yep.
it is being adopted quickly. We've seen, we've been around a while too, and that idea of like it's boring and it's laborious, right? Doesn't seem like that's going to be working anymore. And I know there was
exactly.
early on, someone mentioned, folks playing games. We've got Gary over here who's, winning stuff for hours and hours of gameplay. And now is the opportunity for, whether it's creators or developers or players, right, to now all participate like in that experience together, which I think is pretty exciting. Curious what the rest of you think.
I'd love to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. I mean, this definitely pertains to you as well, Thomas, but for the more developer-centric people in here, where do you think gaming took the wrong turn? Where do you think people started trying to make money rather than start trying to make a game that people want to play and get lost in and enjoy themselves? Um, and how can we shift this concept of play to earn more towards something like play and earn, where earning revenue might be a secondary thought rather than the primary objective of playing that game? Because, Lindsay, when you mentioned MMORPGs, my mind instantly spurred to World of Warcraft, RuneScape, games where there were already these metaverses where there's entirely, player generated economies, there's currencies, there's tons and tons and tons of digital assets being traded that are valuable to these players, and there's real money getting traded. So my question is, where did we go wrong? why don't the play to earn games we see now look like that?
I definitely have input on this. Oh my.
Yeah, jump in, please.
Right. Okay, so straight out the gate, I want to make the big disclaimer that I don't think gaming ever went wrong. And I don't think play to earn gaming ever went wrong either. I think it's all sort of an iterative process, the same way that, to sort of also to Jacqueline's point before, with the great resistance that we're seeing now, the sort of filtering of companies that want to get on the bandwagon of the new thing, it's the .com bubble all over again, right? It's something that sort of disrupts an existing established industry, and you always have two kinds of people when disruption comes knocking on the door. You have people who resist it, and you have people who say, if you can't fight him. So I think that's what we're seeing in Web3 gaming as well, is this sort of like slow push for people to adopt it rather than resist it. And then translating that into the games that are being made, because you and I, Gary, we share the same gripes with the play to earn industry as it's looking right now, which is what I've called it many times. It becomes a gamified financial tool, because we look at this brand new cool technology, which is the Web3 technology, and we say, how can we apply this in every which way and another, so that our game is so permeated by Web3, that we have to do these weird setups where, like, it's the Axie setup where you play for 14 days before you can claim your rewards, because otherwise you'd have transaction spam. Well, fix the problem, fix the transaction spam, stop putting the blockchain where it doesn't belong, and then figure out how do we apply it selectively to the parts of our game where, as you correctly pointed out, Gary, RuneScape trades GP every single day. People trade their skins in Counter-Strike. People trade their rare items in World of Warcraft. Every terms and conditions everywhere says you can't do that, and if we catch you doing it, we'll ban your account. But it happens anyway. So we say, well, that's what the blockchain can democratize. That's what we can apply blockchain and crypto technology here in a way that allows us to circumvent very, very complicated financial regulations, so we can make a game without having to worry about stock prices tomorrow in order to allow players to make money off of it, right? But we have to go back to like what made video games successful to begin with. We can't just say, oh, well, this looks like a video game, let's apply a bunch of Web3 stuff to it. We say, no, why was RuneScape fun? Why was World of Warcraft fun? Why would I want to not sell all the gold I had at any given moment in World of Warcraft, but actually stay there, keep playing? Why would I not have a huge extraction of the money people are making in game? Well, because it's fun and people want to use the gold in game to make their character cooler so they can have more fun, right? So that's what we got to unlock in Web3 gaming. And that's what Axie is trying with Axieland, and we're trying with our fun first principle, and a bunch of cool companies are saying, well, the problem is if there's nothing to spend your money on in game, then all you can do with it is pull it out. And if everybody's only playing it to pull it out, then you don't have a game, you have an investment tool. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but you hit on a very soft nerve for me there.
Yeah, thanks for the expansion. Anyone else want to chime in on this? Garrett, you feel free to. Anyone here on stage, please feel free if you want to add anything about. We're really just talking in general about impact on the gaming industry as it relates to the technology. And then I want to dig in a little because you use the term video game. So I'll be curious to hear what folks think or consider a blockchain game, right? And then, I work very closely with a TTRPG blockchain game company, and that's like a much different, right, experience. But curious what if the expectation is collaborative and interactive, or tell me a little bit about what you think.
Well, it's kind of funny. I mean, as I was thinking of this whole conversation, what came to my mind was just, I mean, you go back to the basics. You look at video games, whether it's like Mario or Skyrim or Zelda, or, I mean, the list goes on, right? I feel like blockchain, quote unquote, games at this point are not there. Like, I feel like some of them are close, but it's like such a basic line. You know what I mean? It's so, to me, I think that in order to truly see a basic, like, kind of just like straight down the road adoption or straight down the road working mechanism, is to really not change much at all, and to just allow the economy to exist. Like, well, I guess technically right now it's not quite an economy. We have like a Roblox being sold over the counter, right? So it does exist, right? There are kids who make Robux and like sell them over the counter on the internet for cash. I think it just comes down to trying to remove some of this narrative that like you're gonna quit your job, you know what I mean, and go back to the basics, which actually I'd say the basics is collectability. And here's the curveball. It's not really different philosophically from proof of work. So like in proof of work, right, if you just kind of break the words down a little bit and think about the action and the response, well, someone plays a video game, they get to the highest level boss, now they get some NFT or special sword, and then the economy does with it what it will. Because I mean, that's what it is with like Pokemon cards. Like, why is a Charizard worth more than right? It comes with them choosing what is their culture, what is their demand, you know? So I think it really does come with the fact that a lot of the blockchain games we've seen are unfortunately just a graphic user interface over a DeFi farm. So it's like,
yeah. I think you're right. But I think there's a very specific reason for that, which, I mean, you mentioned Roblox, which is a very, very interesting example, because Roblox is and for those who don't know Roblox, the game that Roblox are being sold and they're a part of, Roblox is this big universe of user generated content. Can sort of not really be compared to Minecraft, but a little bit, for the boomers out there who don't have time to Google it. But it's very interesting because they are literally on the borderline, right? They are as close to play to earn as you come in traditional Web 2. But there's still the very specific notion that Roblox does not officially permit people to sell the Robux. So the incentive to sell it is somewhat mitigated by the fact that you could lose your account for doing so, and you could lose all the work you've put into the account. So for us as developers, I totally agree with your point, Garrett, in that people should consider it. I mean, the way I've gone to phrasing it now is not you make money when you play the game. What I say now is you're building equity when you play the game, so that if you decide to exit one day, you haven't spent all that time for nothing. So we say you're building equity in your character, you're building equity in your account. But we still have to grapple with the fact that we don't necessarily decide the incentive structure if there is a big red cash out button. And I think that's what Axie Infinity learned very quickly and very early on. And I think it goes to your question as well, Jacqueline, as for we do how do we collaborate, and is this a collaborative industry? And there's such a huge market share in the traditional game market to conquer, but the one thing we have to overcome collaboratively across the entire industry is how the, excuse my French, shit do we prevent people from just cashing out if the option is right there, because that's what it never was in RuneScape. That's what it never was in World of Warcraft. Can you overcome greed when greed is legitimized and endorsed? And then we can make tiny buttons to allow people to off ramp. But once they find the button, it's going to go on the front page of the wiki, because that's how it works. The most searched thing is going to be how to get my money out of Northern Guild, how to get my money out of Axie Infinity, and how do we overcome that? That's the challenge that we're discussing a lot internally in Pixie, and I know we're discussing a lot in the Blockchain Game Alliance, which we happen to be a member of, and they're working to solve this big, what we call the extraction issue, and how do we create not just value injection from Western world players who might not be playing for money at all. How do we create retention for those who are already in the ecosystem, and then how do we reduce extraction and do sustainable extraction in places where it's really necessary, right? Nobody in the Philippines would ever not cash out if it was literally 3 times their monthly wage. So we have to balance all those things, and that's something Roblox never really officially had to do, or Jagex in RuneScape, or Blizzard for World of Warcraft, because just like officially they just didn't allow you to do that, right? And that solved the problem.
Yeah, we deal with that in the dirty side of the consumer insights business, right? So we incentivize consumers to answer questions and participate in research for our clients, to help guide strategy. We specifically work around with really, clients who are struggling, like both from the new technology side as well as existing brands, really on how to understand, right, the impact this is going to have on their brand, their loyalty, what the customer engagement and customer experience now looks like. What do those touch points look like? How do you now personalize and customize, right? Now that you essentially have like all of this data on people. But in the insights industry, people, join these communities to say, hey, I'll participate. And then they earn points, but they have to hit a threshold, right? And then where a lot of like the revenue comes from is basically breakage, right? So people who like bail out because they never reach the threshold. The challenge is, as that industry has evolved, consumers are now kind of like, F that, right? I'm not fucking doing that. Like, because I'm going to do all of these things for 50 cents or whatever. It's going to take me forever to get to $25. And then they just bail out. But it is a model that's looking to change on the consumer insight side as well. So it'll be interesting to see how blockchain and crypto rewards and metaverse environments really, really impact consumer insights and how we're doing that. How we're collecting those opinions to be able to guide those strategies. So interesting. I'd love to hear. Also, Petra had your hand up, so I'd love to give you a chance to speak. And I also want to hear from Kathion and hear about more about the studio. And given the fact that there's quite a few titles already released, curious your position, or if you have a solve for the cash out fear, the fear of cash out, if you will.
Yeah, I have this really radical idea. I don't know, it's maybe a little bit crazy, but go with me. Perpetual cash out. Like, in a sense, building up asset, financialized asset value inside of a game circuit is like a capacitance, right? and so that's friction. And so I don't know if it's about the experience, then it's like a different direction than the financialization. I think incentivization. Otherwise, you can't open up a space, and it's just like a bank account, right? Yeah.
And how does like how does the technology like in ways enable a different experience, right? So there's like a monetization challenge, right, which is what we have had it historically in business whenever you want to engage directly with people, right? And then I just lost my train of thought, so that's the end of that statement. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I completely lost it.
Uh, well, I just want to add to what Thomas mentioned earlier. So basically, we identified that that thing where um, capitals are actually drawn out from the game and basically as some form of earning mechanism for people, for scholars specifically, given the example that Thomas gave earlier with the Philippines. That is something that we could really observe very well. Now, I would say one thing that is very evident in the crypto space right now is it's not going to be something like a race to um, who's going to be the next big thing on crypto gaming, but it's rather since there's a lot of crypto games publishers that are coming up right now. There's a lot of startup right now. It's going to be more of a race to actually who can solve the capital flight issue. So who's gonna be the first one to actually be able to um, incorporate entertainment value and also at the same time um, have the have the key focus and triggers that could um, create the dopamine hit for the gamers, for the players, that it would turn into a really good um monetization. I would say um we're in this the sink and the faucets for the in-game economies will actually be balanced, would be something more robust than what we have now in Web3, in Web3 right now we do have good sink and faucet models. Sink is basically the um
Where?
the- sorry.
No, sorry, I was just making a joke. I was just saying, where do we have good sink and faucet models in Web3? Because I'm not sure I know any.
Yeah, there's actually one
They do
issue that
exist. They do.
we have to solve in Web3, because there's really not uh just to give light on what a sync is, to those who's not aware. So a sync is basically the areas of the economy where the spending is triggered. So this is the area where gamers or investors are going to be spending on the game, and then the faucet is where they are going to get some rewards. So basically, that's the sink and faucet in a nutshell. Now, one thing I think that we can revolutionize this is to make a to highlight maybe one thing that is different in Web3 is the ownership. So yeah, I think this could have a very huge impact in the way um gaming is done, in the way the idea of gaming is going to be marketed, because right now, with ownership, of course, everybody knows that, with the ownership of NFT, it's basically, as long as it's in your wallet, it's forever yours already. Now, the way we're thinking about it in Cathing Gaming right now, however, this is something that is, that is one of our discussions. No, nothing like an solid implementation yet. It's basically something that we are studying right now. But 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 the next Web3 companies should be able to remodel the way ownership are being used in their games. For example, on our end, we do have this project which is Soul Chicks, and with Soul Chicks, we have planned a five different games that are using Soul Soul Chicks IP. So basically, all those are Soul Chicks franchises, and then we will be using the same NFTs, um, same assets, but it's not just going to be on one game. It's going to be used on different games. However, we're trying to like incorporate how the monetization would actually be implemented. One idea is maybe on the other games, there's going to be um, an activation fee that is lower than the cost of purchasing an NFT. So basically, it's gonna put um more money in, or is going to be a sink, and where it's going to put more money in the economy, and then um it's also going to add more entertainment value, um ideally, or theoretically. It's going to add more entertainment value because there's a variation of games, of gameplays, of genres that people are going uh to be able to select from, because there's five different games for one project. So that's one way to see it. But of course, implementation and basically execution is totally different from sometimes how we imagine the economy in the game will be made. So we're still in the process of like studying this, and basically
Yeah.
looking at how we can make the fundamental really really good. Um, but yeah, that's basically one of the ideas.
And it doesn't solve for like value retention and maintenance, right? Like that's still the big issue, is saying, well, even if you have five different games where the IP
Mhm.
is spread, then where does the retention happen? Where's the, as you mentioned, where's the sync, right? Where's the upgrade your character, translate it to this sort of
Mhm.
player environment? But
Mhm.
it's interesting to bring up the notion of carrying NFTs over IPs, because there is one big company out there that we're all aware of, and just to bring the conversation back to the notion of collaboration as well.
Mhm.
I personally think, and it's Pixie stance, that there are the traditional video game market is so massive that there's no point fighting in between one another here in
Exactly.
Web3 gaming, because there are no competitors, to be honest, right? We're much better off going out and trying to conquer some of the traditional gamers who haven't gone into Web3 yet than we are fighting with Ethermon or what have you. I can have my opinion on all these sort of GameFi UIs, but I don't generally bring them up by name externally. Axie might be the exception because they're big enough that they can take a little bit of beating from below. Uh, but I think when you talk about this sort of cross IP platforming, there are definitely two ways to view it. And number one is to say what Galaxy Fight Club is doing, for example, is saying, well, let's do this broad IP Web3 ideal, this promise, this paradise we were all brought, this utopia, where you just integrate whatever NFT collection you have, and we make a super cool bridge that takes whatever standard, whether you're running 721 or you're running something that's newer, and we'll just convert it, translate it, load it into our game, and there you go. You're playing with your Galaxy Kong and Galaxy Fight Club, and you're fighting against I don't know, a Board Ape, whatever, a Viking from Northern Guild. But then there is what's actually unfortunately happening in reality, and I think most of us here, anyone who's a serious actor in the Web3 gaming space, is very well aware of this. And there's a specific company out there who I'm not gonna name by name because the recording thing is flashing in the corner, but uh, who are doing the same thing but in a very different way. And they're doing the Steam, the Epic model. Either you voluntarily board onto our platform, or we buy you out, or we crush you. And they are incredibly successful following that model, right? In Web3 gaming, they own, I mean, what, 18, 19 different IPs now. They're by far, the biggest company in our space. Uh, and they've done it by like sheer aggressive domination of the market. Like some of these guys came from companies that made hyper aggressively monetized Facebook games before they are went where they are now. So it's we got to be careful with these ideals, because I agree that this cross IP is a really cool thing, but at the same time, if you're trying to do the platform the cross IP thing, like you have a massive billion-dollar competitor out there who is just aggressively going at people. So the limits of these Web3 ideals of collaboration and transparency and open source are being tremendously tested within the sort of enterprise space in Web3 right now by companies like that, which are really like challenging, how much can we openly share, because there's a very good risk that they'll use it against you if you don't, bend the knees. So uh, it's nice to hear that people still share these ideals. It's nice to hear you have them at Cathune Gaming. It's something that should be preserved in our mind at Pixie, and we work with a very collaborative standpoint. But I'm also, honest enough to say that right now that mentality is losing the battle in Web3.
Well, what do you think? I'm curious, and please, for those folks that have been listening, if you'd like to come up and join the conversation, just raise your hand. What are the thoughts behind like finance versus non-financed outside funding? Does that help to lend support to the liquidation problem, or what are the opinions? I don't know. The project I'm working on, we did raise. A couple million. So just curious what your thoughts are on that, whether that's good, bad, or doesn't really matter.
I don't think it's realistic. Sorry for just barging in, but I don't think it's realistic in game development these days to not do external funding, right? Like what we raised non-equity $3 million just by selling NFTs, and we still had to, like, we're in the middle of an equity raise right now because making games is expensive, and making games on the blockchain, something people don't often appreciate, is a lot more expensive because good blockchain engineers are few and far between. And when you're dealing with real life financial instruments, now suddenly your stuff in a game is worth money. You can't afford a bad engineer because you can't afford insecure smart contracts, right? So your development budget goes through the roof when you're doing Web3 games. Even something as simple as Northern Guilds, we're doing this retro 2D game with relatively simplistic interface and mechanics, despite being an MMO, and it requires massively secure smart contracts that just drain the budget. So I think anyone who these days would complain about taking venture funding or incubator funding or parent company funding, what have you, is maybe that's an idealist view. It's an I can appreciate it, but because it preserves the stick it to the man values of crypto, but it's not realistic to I mean, we raised $3 million and it barely lasts us a year at the rate we've been going to develop Web3, right? So what are you going to do, sell $100 million of NFTs before you can start moving your company? It's not realistic.
Fluff World's pretty close.
Sure, I mean, yeah, there you have diamonds in the rough, right? But
No, but I
that's a
think
breakout company.
you're dead on though. It's something that I kind of drank the Kool-Aid for a little bit. I was like, oh man, these blockchain games are going to be great. And no doubt that after a while I started just being a person who clicked a button, and through not that much research, it is $100-200 million budgets to build Activision games. Like, they are really big. Like,
yeah, they're massive. So like
they're
even if you're
huge.
doing a game that's a tenth of that, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. But the thing is people are almost expecting that. Like, I think the only other game that I know of that has like a impressive budget but yet to be seen production is Star Atlas. And that one's
Right.
just, I have no idea what's going to happen. I spent a bunch of money on the NFTs that I stake for basically tokens that are valueless. And I'm just going to smoke my hopium and pray for the best, you know? But it's a cool attempt. I don't know what it is, dude. I don't even know if that crap's real. Give me a total scam for all I know at this point.
They're a fellow member of the Blockchain Game Alliance, so I'll keep my peace.
Gary, you're awfully quiet, and I'd love to hear from your perspective as somebody who's like an obsessive, avid gamer. Like, what are your thoughts on what we've chatted about as it relates to adoption, monetization, and maybe like from your perspective, like what is it that you're most excited about, like as a gamer, that you want to see happen?
Thank you. I have a lot of thoughts actually. The first thing on my mind was not only is Web3 gaming undergoing a lot of changes, but traditional gaming is also going through a lot of changes. I think one good example of that is the success that Elden Ring had this year, and compared to a huge launch like Horizon Forbidden West, where I realized that there's no one solution to or one formula for creating a successful game. It doesn't come down to perfect UI, perfect UX. It doesn't come down to just flawless, bugless gameplay. It really comes down to the culture that surrounds the game and how much it draws everybody in to almost be obsessive about the game. So one question I had for you, Thomas, is earlier you mentioned that blockchain tech isn't necessarily a bad thing for gaming, but what is bad right now is how it's being applied. Or not necessarily bad, but there's just negative aspects of how it's being applied now. So how do you differentiate how blockchain tech has been applied versus what you expect it to be or what you would hope for it to be? And if you don't have a response for that, that's fine.
Um, can you give me the question again?
So how do you differentiate how blockchain tech has been applied to the gaming industry
Right.
versus how you would hope for it to be? Because
Aha.
it seems
Right.
like
Okay.
it's not
Yeah.
just where it's applied, but also when and how it's applied. For
Sure.
instance, I've been playing Dustbreakers for like the last hour, and I'm number 6 in the world, and I haven't earned anything. The play to earn model isn't out yet, but I just had fun
Sure.
playing.
Right. So that's a brilliant question, first of all, and it's kind of sad that Wesley, my CTO, isn't here because he would have absolutely adored you for it. The problem, the fundamental problem with the blockchain in one sentence. Let's start there. For Web3 gaming is that it wasn't made for it, right? When Satoshi sat down and wrote out the initial contract for Bitcoin, Jesus Christ, when sorry, it's 3 a.m. here. When Vitalik wrote down smart contracts for Ethereum, nobody thought, okay, somebody's going to just absolutely freaking just shove as much as this technology as possible into a game for the heck of it and say, look what I made, right? Nobody thought that was what was going to happen. So the problem you have is all these transactions, for example, right? There's no way to do lump sum transactions. There's no, sorry, that's not true, but there's no practical way to do like custodial, feeless transactions. So when we sit down and make an MMO in Pixie, for example, we say, well, I don't want to give you the user experience where you go through, you know this because I mean, professional gamer, Jesus Christ, you know it better than I do. The user experience, I don't want you to have the one of going through an entire dungeon, and then you're murdering a bunch of mobs and you're having the Diablo experience, but like there is zero loot dropping, right? And then at the very end of the level, I give you a little blue chest, and you open that chest and you get all your loot at once. That's just not the same visceral player experience as when you have that loot fest of, like, you drop a massive AoE, you kill 35 mobs, and there's just gold all over the floor. But then the problem with the blockchain is, if we do it that way, then every time you go to pick up a piece of this gold, you can't even auto pick up. You can't just run over and auto pick up, because MetaMask is going to pop up and be like, hey, would you like to receive 9 gold? Hey, would you like to receive 7 gold? Well, guess what? It's going to cost you $8 every time you want to, pick up this trashy gray label brass buckler that you're just going to go sell to a vendor once you get back in town. So that's the fundamental problem with applying the blockchain technology to Web3, and that's why Axie had to do a weird solution. It's why PegAxie had to do a weird solution. It's why even the guys who got pretty close, like Relics of the Lost Idols, had to have this weird loot setup. So the way I want to see it applied, the way we're doing it at Pixie, and I don't think we're the only ones doing it. I don't necessarily, I'm humble enough to say I'm not even sure we're the ones doing it best, but we're definitely doing it, is we're saying, what if we take this stupid ass freemium double currency model that has been built anyway, of having like random ass platinum that people used to pay real money for, right? But we make it essentially the RuneScape bond. We make it the middleman. We make it the bridge currency. So we can still have secure game servers that are hosting all your in-game currency. And then you say, well, I want to sell my legendary sword. I get a bunch of in-game gold for it. That gold has just a free market value associated to it in the platinum, the premium currency. That stuff's decided by the market, like the price of a RuneScape bond. And that's the exchange value for in-game currency to the platinum currency. And now you get to confirm a transaction, and now you get to get that platinum, which is actually tethered to the chain. It's on chain, and now you can sell it for Ethereum. So there's a middleman, and the bonus to that is that we can always measure up, well, if we wanted to, we could say, what's the entire economy of our game worth as a whole, right? We could do the Federal Reserve thing and actually like review our economy, because we know 100% of the circulating supply of the bridge token, the middleman, basically equates to 100% of the existing circulating supply of the in-game currency, even though that isn't on the chain. So that's the beauty of those premium currencies, if you want to call them that, or the middleman currencies. And that's something that crypto would do beautifully in these games. But unfortunately, up until now, in the first generation of play to earn games, it was just a matter of, let's put it in as much stuff as possible, and then for the next generation, we'll review what works and doesn't. So that falls on our shoulders now to try to get it not right, but a little more right, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I wanted to invite Roderick to speak as well, because I know that you raised your hand and came up. So feel free to chime in, ask questions, or share your thoughts.
Yeah, sorry to
Yeah,
be
all right,
taking.
thanks. And sort of dovetailing on what Thomas was saying, my experience, or the majority of my gaming experience, is World of Warcraft, and I would just, in terms of Web3, I would love to see, an open world MMO that has dungeons, that has guilds, that has factions, that has an auction house, so I can grind away at my professions and sell stuff to roll new characters, and all the great community that happens just hanging out there, even if you don't have time to go and join a guild and raid on a regular basis. So anywhere from young kids playing with my kids, and casual gamers, to the hardcore guildies. I just think putting a Web3 and ownership on that would just be phenomenal. And I don't know if that solves all your faucet issues, but I wish I could log back into WoW and have all my gold and stuff sitting there and waiting for me, and it actually had value. So that's sort of my take. That's one of the reasons.
Northern Guilds.
One of the reasons I'm excited about Gripner. So I'll leave it at that.
Check out our game.
Love that. Gina, would you post a Gripner link there at the top? And I want to make sure we get, if you've been here enjoying the discussion, we're going to keep chatting. But if you found anything valuable from our speakers on the stage, please feel free to give them a follow. And we are going to put up a post right now. Someone brought up Gripner, which is a block TTRPG blockchain game. And the Genesis NFT collection is launching in 2022. And right now, there is an opportunity to become part of the pre-allow list, and then we airdrop a free NFT designed by artist Angry Blue, who has his work in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He just yesterday sold out. He designed the latest Primus poster, and then it went on sale to the public and was like gone like instantly. And then from there, 100 of those 500 people will actually receive, a digital physical print. So everybody here that's participating in our blockchain game series for ISA is eligible. Gripner has made that available. So that's posted at the top. If you are interested in getting on the list, then go ahead and you can just send me a DM and we'll get you set up. Where should, if you have links, if you're on the stage and you have links that you'd like to have posted to the top while we're chatting, you can send those links through messaging to either the Derbied one or Gina, and they will post them up there for you too. Anyone down in the audience have a question?
Or just go ahead and post them if you know how.
Somebody said that we can't batch transactions, or there's not really good batching support, but there's an open source project that just dropped that I'm really blown away by. This guy Skogard built, and if you haven't checked out Cell, which is like an extension of Money Pipes, you got to check it out.
What was the name?
Skogard is on Twitter and built Money Pipes and just came out with Cell.
Interesting. Is it all open source?
100% state machine, decentralized. Essentially, the core critical concept, use the CID as the token ID. From there, we go into binary Merkle tree operations on the CID, and it just gets really crazy. But open source on that for Cell is batching transactions, for Money Pipes.
Very interesting, right? As it's like everything is moving so quickly that, like you said, like today or yesterday or wherever, new things are popping up. There certainly is like a lot of opportunity in the space for entrants and startups, right? There's a lot of problems to be solved here. So I think there's quite a bit of opportunity. Anyone have any, final questions? I know we've got some folks up like super late. I'm happy to stay open and continue chatting. And if we don't have any more questions, we also can go. We are running this series for the entire month of June, hosted by ISA, and we do work with companies bringing blockchain projects and helping them with their corporate Web3 strategy and their full kind of go-to-market strategy by through data and science and research is basically where we come from. So please give other people a follow. If you'd like to come up before we close down, please do. And while we're up here, please feel free to jump in and share any of your thoughts or what maybe we could leave out too, like with what you're most excited about. And I'd love to hear, Lindsay, from you, like, what do you think the biggest like opportunity is, or what are you most excited or pumped up? What do you think this technology is going to do for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've loved what everyone has shared, and I think that in a lot of ways they've expressed it so eloquently. For me, I am really looking forward to like seeing how we can bring personally, if I can say personally, I think like the art side and what's happening in the NFT world and what it is bringing to gaming and the ownership that people are able to have over assets that they are acquiring in their games, and the things that they love about their characters and their stories that they're building and experiences that they're building. That is, to me, one of the most exciting parts, is getting to own like your story and own the parts of your story, and that they get to be a little bit more not only intimate in your wallet, but also that they could be valued, and that you could sell them and trade them. And I think that there's a really interesting bridge happening here, and it's, yeah, the sky is the limit. I think this is 100% the future, so I'm 100% on board.
Love that. How about the rest of you on stage? What are you most excited about? And Thomas, if your CTO would like to come back and chat with us, like I said, we're talking games all month, and we're switching to Tuesday nights. So it'll be Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. PST, which I'm not sure where he's based. It might be a pain as well.
He's in the Netherlands, but he's up late like I am, so.
Perfect. Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely connect on the back end. I think next Tuesday is we're talking about gaming environments, like kind of really digging in with game designers, about what they're working on, their challenges are, and sort of what's different between traditional game design that they're used to working on versus the blockchain game side. So that'll be next week.
Very nice. Thank you so much for having us. This was a really great conversation.
Yeah, I love it. I think it helps with the collaboration. I referenced the consumer insights industry earlier, and about this actually was year 9. But coming up on year 10 of industry organization we formed with like 5 other thought leaders that was specifically around consumer sampling. And we found that there just was, everybody was so competitive and so protective over sort of like what they did and their systems and their tools and their rules and their data cleaning and validation. And now, I just spoke on stage there, and it was year 9, and there's, several hundred people there every single year that walk through that door. And they are direct in the moment on an exchange platform competitors, and take off that hat and sit down, and we talk about industry problems like fraud and security and onboarding and retention and all of those traditional things. But I'm really hoping to see some of that in this space as well. I think, a lot of good stuff has come out of that, and really nothing bad. So we're in year 10. So hold on. One of my other co-hosts just jump in, or speakers for me. I am gonna. My daughter is leaving right now for Boston for 2 weeks, and I need to give her a big hug. Hold on.
Oh, do that.
Yeah,
do that. Family
in a second.
Where can we learn more about the MMORPG game that you're working on with Lindsay?
Northern Guilds. I think they might even. They were here listening just before. Our game's called Northern Guilds, so you can go to northernguilds.com. You can go to our company site, pixieinteractive.io, or pixieint here on Twitter, and you can find all the information there. So before I have to run to bed, and it's 3:05 here, and I've got an early morning meeting. But I think, just to answer the question, there's something exciting happening in the future in the blockchain and Web3 spaces, especially for gaming. I'm very excited to see all of the Web3 gaming DAOs fail, and then some of them not fail. And when that day comes that some of them don't fail anymore, that's going to be really, really interesting to see, because people don't really give that credit for not having ever been done before, right? So we're talking about DAOs and a lot of things that are like, we're looking at these financial DAOs that you're already seeing. You're seeing the Open DAO launched just a few months ago, trying to democratize like fund ownership of OpenSea, right? Fractionalized ownership of the platform itself and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But it's also like, that's been done a million times before. That's basically just a hedge fund where everybody's a partner. That's not too interesting. But then what you're seeing happening in gaming with these DAOs is somebody's trying to democratize the ownership of creative visions and intellectual property. And there's a real argument there to be made for too many cooks in a kitchen, right? Usually, like, could you imagine if you had to have 400 directors on a movie? It would go horribly wrong. Everybody
Yeah.
has 600 different visions. Everybody wants to do 8,000 different things. But now everybody wants to do this DAO thing for games. We're not even doing it at Pixie. I mean, it's on the roadmap, but it's on the roadmap with a big question mark that says maybe someday, 10 years from now, when we figure out how the hell you develop games well in a democratizable way. So I'm really, really, really excited to see the first ones crack that nut. And I can definitely say it's not going to be us, because there's just a bunch of problems we would rather solve first and that I think we're better equipped to solve. But I mean, I will throw all my weight and support behind whoever is the first one to do so, because it'll be really, really cool to see.
Yeah, building off that, like, better equipped to solve, right? That goes back sort of to that like, you know what I mean, collaboration about how you move the space and the category forward. So thanks for sharing, and thanks for staying up and coming and joining us. And we'd love definitely to see you back, and we'll send you a message to invite your CTO on. And if you guys haven't checked out the site, they have fabulous bios. Like, they're just fun to read. And I was reading through the website and the Twitter bio, and then, like, on the actual story on the site, and, like, reading that gave me, like, a real feel, kind of like from a brand personality perspective, if you will. So I just thought I would call that out, being a marketing person.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words.
Advice. Yeah, or my feedback. Yeah.
I put a tweet with the link to pixieinteractive.io up top in the nest. There's also one for Cathion Gaming, if anybody wants to go check it out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thanks so much
and
for
if
the
you're
invite.
not familiar, you can just kind of scan through where you see those dots, and it'll show the different pinned tweets. And if you are interested in also being part of the pre-allow list and the airdrop with Gripner's First World launching called The Glimmering, then just send us a message and we will connect you with that as well. And starting next week, our series again is Blockchain Games. And we also will be spending our series, if you will, leading up to NFT Expoverse. And we will be giving away a VIP ticket to the event, which is $3,000. And people will be able to, if folks can't use it themselves because they can't travel, it can go to community or client or brand or wherever. It's totally transferable, I guess is the word. And so starting next Tuesday, that is going to also open up to, and hopefully that, you know, get some more people opportunity to be in the space and do more learning, more sharing.
Very nice.
Anyone have any final words? I just went from like crying as I'm hugging my teenage daughter who's going to travel across the country by herself today. And then now I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, I have no teenager now for like 3 weeks. So I went from crying to like, I'm pretty fucking pumped right now.
You enjoy every minute of that.
Oh man.
Teenage daughters are not easy. I'll be like crying
new lease
again
on life.
Oh Lord.
So
big congratulations there.
Enjoy your freedom, Jacqueline. Thanks so much for the invite again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
thank you all.
Great conversation. Bye.
Bye.